Okay.
Lydia Ponce and I too filled out a card, but miraculously it was lost. To you, sir, I say there's nothing minor about the development that's happening in Venice, especially at 19%. I suggest that there is a moratorium, cease and desist on all waivers for Venice and Pacific Palisades until all of you can drive through Venice and Pacific Palisades. If you let me know that you're there, we'll probably help you get a cup of coffee that's affordable, because it's a choice between $3 and $7, and that's how it is in our neighborhood. I'm not here about the coffee. I'm here about choices and options. There are people here who left because they had to go to work. I'm here because there's a grandmother who came to our meeting and was in tears because there's bulldozers bumping against her wall to her home where she's lived for over 50 years. And what's happening is there's nothing minor about this development, because it can wake her up at 7 o'clock in the morning with no notification whatsoever, not a bulletin, not a bullseye map, nothing from the city. So you're trusting that the representatives from the city and our governance are going to do the right thing? Well, I say to you that it has to stop, and it should stop here. You have the power to make our quality of life better than what it was yesterday just by simply putting a stop to this and coming through and visiting on your way to Santa Barbara for the next month's meeting. I beg you, please, not for me, for the grandmothers, for the families that have retired there who are trying to enjoy their home while sunset is, at the end of the day, they're in front of their yards and they have these vulture developers and or realtors handing them cards because they can't even sit outside to enjoy their day without being assaulted with their property value. I'm sorry, we're losing sight of what is sacred here. We really are. We talked about the earth, we talked about the ground, we talked about water, we talked about air. What about the quality of life for some of our seniors here? I'm glad that we're not buildings and having facelifts, because we would be continue to be seen as human beings as not historical or not relevant.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission. And Jack, do you want to make any comments beyond what you had?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I just wanted to identify these waivers that we're dealing with right here by number. That's 5-14-0-074-W. That's at Marco Place, Venice. 514-008-4-W at Wilson on Wilson Avenue. 514-0124-W. That's at on Vernon Avenue. And then finally 5-14-0212-W on Indiana Avenue. Those are the four waivers that we're talking about here. One other quick note: we don't rubber stamp these things that are coming out of the city. We do our own independent analysis on each one of these to determine whether or not they're consistent with the plan. We don't get into the actual design of the building itself as far as architectural styles and things like that to ensure they're in conformity with the or the character of the area. And some of these areas are more developed out than others, or have gentrified more quickly. So there's a mix of development types within different areas. Some are more of the old bungalow style, and some aren't. So it takes we have to look at that on a on an area-specific basis. So with that,
you're seeking concurrence.
We're still seeking concurrence.
Thank you.
Charles,
any
do you want to...
questions or comments from commissioners? No. Oh, Commissioner? On this matter? No. On anything related to the... Yes, please.
Just gathering my cues as to whether it's the right time to vent. I'm just struggling a lot with this. I am looking at the Coastal Act Section 30253, minimization of adverse impacts. New development shall do all of the following, and it lists several different things that it should do. The last one, E, where appropriate, protect special communities and neighborhoods that, because of their unique characteristics, are popular visitor destination points for recreational uses. When I close my eyes and I say Venice and I think Venice, there's a particular image that comes to my mind. I don't know. Try it yourself. Paint the picture of what Venice means to you.
Piazza San Marco.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And no, not that Venice. And earlier this morning, we were talking about the Venice canals on a particular issue. The Venice canals in Venice, California. Close your eyes. Think about what that means to you. And I submit to you that it's probably not, although it's becoming that way. Probably it's starting to creep into your original perception of what it is. It's probably not mega mansions consuming the entire box volume of space in that lot. It is those really cute bungalows, and I don't. The reason I guess I don't have trouble with that because that's clear to me that if any neighborhood in California along the coast deserves to be qualified as a community of character, of special character, it's got to be Venice. What I'm having trouble with is trying to figure out how we deal with this. We're hearing staff say, first of all, I never want to make it sound like I don't appreciate staff because I know that they are the strongest and most ardent defenders of the Coastal Act, and definitely work hard to make sure that we protect the coast and the Coastal Act. But I hear and understand the rationalization that in Venice we've seen a lot of new development come in already, and we're at the point of, well, is it gentrified? Is it original? Well, if we keep going down that logic, it will become more and more gentrified. We'll have more and more mega box mansions along the coast to where we won't, like I said, the image in your mind when you close your eyes about Venice will disappear. It will be just these giant homes of the stars and the, tech titans. And that's not okay with me. So I would want to, I guess, I don't know what the right thing to do is, but to pull this from just concurrence. But I also would love to try and figure out a way. Moratorium is probably not the way to do this, but is there a way to better get a sense of how we define communities of character? Is there a better way of letting people know that that's what we want to do in Venice and other parts along the state, so that we don't have this incredible rush to gentrification, to flipping houses, to maximizing space, buildable space, and losing the heart and soul of a community.
Thank you. I appreciate you speaking. Commissioner Groom, Commissioner McClure, then Commissioner Zimmer. And, one other rule we try to live by is wave, don't clap. Thank you.
So it's all right with me. It's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that because Venice is relatively close to Long Beach, we had a lot of people here today. We didn't have time to hear everyone this morning. So a lot of people had to go home, and I'm just wondering if it would be worth our time or worth our while to have kind of a workshop, so that a couple of things. Everyone could better understand the waiver process. I mean, Jack's done a sort of a synthesis of it today, but to understand the waiver process, to have a chance for the residents to speak a little more long than 2 minutes, and have kind of a dialogue so that maybe we can all get back on the same page of what the Coastal Act for Venice is, why there is no LCP, how we could, one of the things we talked about earlier was encouraging, sending a delegation to see the mayor. Maybe this would be a help to have some sort of town hall meeting on Venice, on waivers, on development, just, kind of refocus the education process and the learning process. Because, there are times when, quite frankly, I don't understand how come we have something on consent, something on public hearing, and something on waiver. I haven't quite figured that out myself. So maybe that would be a start as we all got ourselves a little more educated on this process.
Thank you. Commissioner McClure.
Yeah, I have a question for staff, I think, with the one presentation that the waiver is for demolishing, but the building has already been demolished, but we're doing a waiver to grant that to be demolished. Is that correct?
That sounds like a violation to me.
So if that is, I would suggest that we couldn't approve that waiver today, because we would need, if it's been brought to our attention that that's already happened, then we need to look at the violation and not allow a waiver to be offered at this point. And I also support Commissioner Broom's position, her position on having a open discussion with a type of town hall. I mean, and maybe it could happen when we were down here at a time when we had, instead of a 2-day, we may have a 2-day meeting, but we may take that 3rd day to offer assistance to these communities that are hitting a stone wall in relationship to not having an LCP, and how that can be rectified.
Thank you. Commissioner Zimmer, then Commissioner Botzko.
I'll pass for now.
Commissioner Botzko.
Sorry,
That's fine.
far away. I'd like to explore this idea of a moratorium a little more. You said, Charles and Jack, you've talked about this, and in your discussions, where did you come in the end of those discussions, how you really feel about that?
Yes, I don't know if Jack and I talked specifically about a moratorium, but going back to tying a couple things that have been said here, I think Commissioner Vargas is right to zero in on that policy. That's our community character policy. It's also true that that's one of the most challenging policies that we have struggled to implement over the years because of what it's about, community character, and it's inherently a local concern, but it also has that policy basis in the Coastal Act, which is also tied to the visitor serving aspect of the Coastal Act. So when I mentioned Mendocino and Carmel last month and our experience there, those communities readily come to mind as places you visit, in part because of the nature of the community. And so the Commission historically has taken that focus, I believe. That said, we do have visual resource policies and scale and development concerns, and so there is that component wrapped up into a question about what is the appropriate community character. Also related, as I said earlier today, we used to do affordable housing in the coastal zone. We don't anymore. So to the extent there's a social dimension to this question about how is the community changing and becoming less affordable, or changing the parameters for who is able to live there or not, that's not we don't have a social mandate in that area. We do have the policy that Commissioner Vargas mentioned. In the case of Carmel, and going to the question of the moratorium, we have a general policy that asks us to make sure that when we're approving a permit, we are not prejudicing the completion of an LCP that would be inconsistent with the Coastal Act. And the idea there is, if we don't have an LCP yet, we haven't figured out overall in a comprehensive way what we think the planning outcomes ought to be for a place, whatever the issue. And therefore, you potentially undermine that if you approve something without having a sense of the cumulative whole. So how do we know whether this demolition and rebuild is okay unless we know what we want the whole community to look like?
Yes.
That's essentially what happened in a number of communities early on. In the early days when we were writing LCPs, we didn't act on certain things, or we even denied permits if we thought we were going to prejudice what we wanted to happen at the level of the LCP. In Carmel, we had been processing demolitions of many structures that people were becoming concerned about was a cumulative loss of historic resources and historic character in Carmel. And we were also seeing the rebuild of much larger homes. So we were going from an average of about 1,200 square feet to 2,400 square feet. The Commission eventually stopped waiving permits and started processing permits, which is a workload issue, and that's the other dimension here that's challenging. There's a lot of activity in Venice, and there was in Carmel, and it's a serious workload implication for the staff if you go in the direction of taking a more rigorous review or in-depth review. we did that in Carmel, and we started doing things on the consent calendar, and eventually we did some regular calendars, and there were even